Hello and welcome. When I was 4 years old, I wanted to sound like, speak like, and be like this warm, rich voice that I heard in my rediffusion in the corner of my house. Auntie Olga is my special guest and up close this week. Auntie Olga was born Olga Lopes on December 26, 1918 in Guyana.
Place called Broad Street, 39 Broad Street. I remember that. It's a street that leads to the cemetery.
And what was growing up in Guyana like?
Quite good. Quite good, but very disciplined. You know, everybody could tell you what you were doing. Usually everybody told me all the things I was doing wrong. I never seemed to do the right things. Although when I look back in my childhood, I was a good child. But I ran instead of walked. So that was bad.
You're always leaps and bounds
Yes.
ahead of
I would
everything.
ride a bicycle by not just jumping on in the nice ladylike fashion, but spring jumping. So that was wrong. And fortunately or unfortunately, I had a sister, she's dead now, she was about 18 years older than me, who was a wonderful person. So most of my early years were shadowed with this, why can't you be like Agnes? And have to say, she should have been a very good model, but I could not fit into that. I was a bit of a tomboy. And I don't know that I was deliberately a tomboy, but at the time, not being a nice little girl, the nice little girls didn't want to play with me. I was too wild. So it was the not so nice little boys that I played with. We pitched marbles and we did things, jumped in the canal, you know, the grubby, muddy canal,
Right.
but it didn't matter at all. And that's more or less my growing years. At school, I was a dunce. I never passed from one class to the next. The reason being, I was a sickly child. I went to school for many years, every other day. I never even got a certificate for regular attendance. They moved me from one class to the next because I had served
Because of
2
age.
years. Yeah,
yes.
you just moved on. Not there was much hope in me ever getting there. I had one very sad experience which taught me something too. I always had a secret ambition to do things, to draw pictures and so on. And one day, I was still in the slate form. One day I drew a man which consisted of 2 round circles and 4 sticks. 2 belonged to the arms, 2 belonged to the legs. And I made a man. I mean, you could have seen from what I had added to these things that this was a man.
Anatomically, it was a man.
That's right. And there was a girl sitting behind me and she snatched at my slate. And I realized why she snatched at the slate. Suddenly you felt you'd done something wrong. So I spat on my man and I rubbed him out. And there was general commotion in the classroom. And in the school that I went, it was just one big building and classrooms all around the building. So everybody saw what was going on. By the time the teacher had got the slate and gave it to me to draw what I drew, because she was told what I had drawn, I drew this thing that it was neither man nor woman. And Claudia, that was the name of the girl, didn't want to be made a liar, so they went into conference again and they handed me the slate again 2 or 3 times, and of course I drew it without identifying its sex. The nun came after all this confusion, and I think Sister suspected that I was by this time dying with fright. And she gave me the benefit of the doubt, and she says, I don't know, Claudia, why you insist that Olga did more than what she said she did. This is what she drew. So Claudia then snatched the slate from Sister and added
What you
what
had
I had
added
left
originally,
out.
yeah.
And I said, no, it wasn't so big. So I ended up standing in the middle of the school, writing on my slate 300 times, Jesus, teach me how to be good. Jesus, teach me how to be good. I can't remember how many lines the slate took on both sides, but you rubbed it out and started writing all over again. So that was my last attempt at becoming an artist by way of drawing.
But what did you want to be
I don't
as a
know.
little girl? Did you have any dreams at
Not
that
really,
time?
you know, I just wanted to be accepted. But as I said, I was not a nice little girl.
Traditionally.
And I wasn't a bad girl. When I look back, I was good to the point of stupidity. I just wanted to be accepted, but because I wasn't a girly girl,
and
I wasn't a girly girl because the girly
Yes.
girls didn't want this girly girl. And at school, you had a lot of problems. So I mixed more with the children that were not considered bright. We were not bad, but we were not bright. For whatever reasons, they were not bright. We were all not bright. And so we got into a lot of mischief. You know, like once we filled the urinal with bricks, me and the boys, and they made us empty it. You know, they just knew I had done it. At school, I used to wish that the nuns, for instance, would pay some attention to me. Whenever they had plays, I wished they would ask you to sweep the stage. You know, now it gives me a thrill when there I was, eager and almost begging to be allowed to be a part of backstage or whatever part of the performance. And today I'm more or less center stage.
Yes,
you know?
all the time.
I don't know how it happened. Somebody looks after me.
We hear of a Guyana now that sounds hard in terms of making a living. You hear about the prices and what they have and what they don't have. But what do you remember that is special about your Guyana in that time?
It was friendly. You know, we never had nightclubs, and we certainly don't have beaches, and we visited. And you didn't have to let anybody know you were coming. You went. If they were home, okay. If they were not home, you just ride a little further on and visited with somebody else. It was people contributed to each other. It wasn't things or special places. It was your home that accepted you. There was a lot of homeliness. There was an old cousin of ours that decided at 11 o'clock she was going to visit. And
11 p.m.?
That's right, because some of her visitors did not go away until late. And she would come by and yell for my mother, Rosie! And mother will come down in her nightdress and they will sit and have a conversation. She come to visit now, my Rosie was asleep.
Wow.
We visited, we knew so much of each other, and it was a lovely cosmopolitan country. I will tell you something. I think it's this separation that came out of political ambitions that created a lot of the sad situation that exists now in Guyana. And to tell you the truth, I am a little anxious sometimes when I see where things are going in Barbados. You know,
Go ahead.
I do a fair amount of charity work, and I don't go to you unless you ask me to come. And I remember once going to a woman that had invited me to come because she needed some help. Well, I arrived there and there was a little girl, must have been her daughter, in the yard attending to something. Then suddenly she looked up and she saw me and she started yelling in fear, Mommy, 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 a white woman, Mommy, Mommy, a white woman. That child was afraid of me, you know, and that saddened me. It really saddened me that a child would be something like that. Of course, I don't, as a rule, have that problem with everybody that know me otherwise.
After school, let us go back to the story. After school, what happened after you left school?
What happened? Oh, you mean as regards getting into some sort of business? Right. Broadcasting, as you probably know or don't, let me tell you now, started in Guyana. And we had this novelty. Of course, we used to go to people's houses that had radios. And as a young person, you were not near the radio. The owner of the house was there, and you would hear the reception was like eggs being fried and water dropping in the pan and a lot of static. And it were passing down what the man just said, and the man just said. So,
coming down the line to those outside.
And we just know there was a noise. Some of it was audible to those nearest to the set. And those of us at the other end, you know, it was of no great importance. So when this radio came to Guyana, everybody went to do something. And the technicians didn't care what you put in, providing you had the guts to stand up in front of this terrifying thing, this microphone, and do something. You had big men reciting, the boys stood on the burning deck and all that sort of thing, and singing songs like the Rosary, and they were all tenors and baritones and so on. And I played a mandolin very badly. And I don't think I ever played a tune from beginning to end without making a mistake. But I was brazen enough, and they didn't care. You just had to have that courage to do something.
Before the microphone.
Make a sound,
Yes.
whether it was right or however it was, they'd come out at the other end. So while I was there, playing the mandolin was always a challenge for me, but I would hear people singing. And we were a singing family. It didn't matter that 3-4 people singing 3-4 different songs in the house. You know, you just sang all the time. I decided I was going to sing. And I started singing. And I stopped with the mandolin. And then Johnny Adamson, who was the man that compounded Ferrol and Limacol, produced the first sponsored program. And they chose from the lot of us, me as a singer, and paid me the handsome sum of 75 cents for 2 songs. And I lost my accompanist. She would have gone on playing for nothing. Mm-hmm. But it was so demeaning to be offered 75 cents for 2 songs. Man, I would have paid him 75 cents for 2 songs to let me sing. So I sang for more and more, then less and less singing for more and more, until I became the vocalist of the program that was considered the hit parade of Guyana, and then known as the Blonde Heartbeat of the Caribbean. Look at the Blonde Heartbeat, eh? And the singing sweetheart of Guyana. And that was my whole life, as a singer first of all. When I got married in 1939, long before you or your mother were born, I gave up broadcasting, because in those days when you became Mrs. Somebody, that was, I don't know whether it was an ambition, but it was considered an achievement. And I went to live 6 to 9 miles away from Georgetown itself and gave up broadcasting. But performing was not denied me, or I didn't seek to be there on stage. But it was during the war years, 1939, all the way through those years. And while I could say no to some salaried thing, I could not say no to a cause. You sang for the boys over there and an ambulance and whatever they were raising funds for.
Efforts.
So I kept on stage. And that's where the double-barrel use of my name came into being, because I wanted to be Mrs. Seal, you know, I had arrived. And they wanted Olga Lopes. Lopes is my maiden name. So I insisted on Seal, and they insisted on Lopes. And that's where the double...
won.
I would say, this is Olga Seal speaking, you know, Mrs. Seal speaking. Mrs. Who? So, Olga man, Olga Lopes. So that's how that came into being. And I sang through the war years at live concerts. And then a man came to Berbice, where I was living, and brought up a program there where he was collecting whatever talent came. Say the program was scheduled for 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock, he would arrive in New Amsterdam. Whoever felt like doing something came and did the something, whether the something was worthy of being listened to. And I was disappointed in what I was hearing from the program, because by this time, having appeared in so many live concerts and usually provided the talent that was there for these live concerts, I knew that Berbice had some wonderful talent. Where were these people? So eventually they asked me, and I said, you waited now to ask me what happened? He said, well, we called you on the first 2 programs and you were not there. And quite right, I was in Georgetown. Mm-hmm. Would you appear? I said, yes, I'd appear, providing I can help you to produce the program, because what you pick up, it's an insult to the talent that's here in Berbice. And I produced that 3rd program, and as I produced it, I gave them the talent that I knew was there. And the 4th program, he begged me to do it. And that was the end of his contract with the broadcasting station. And they refused to renew it unless I took it. And I told him, no, I'm not going to. It was his program. I don't want to take it away from him. I had no real ambition to go back into broadcasting. But they insisted, he said, unless you do it, he's not going to be allowed to do it. And I know the talent of Berbice enjoyed having their talent showcased. So we went on with this program called Berbice Calling, and it was a tremendous success. And then I took my daughter to school in Georgetown because she wasn't doing very well in Berbice, and went down. My husband and I communicated at weekends. And when I got to Georgetown, they asked me, would I come back to broadcasting? Now, I've come back in a different role. I became a producer, not setting out to be a producer for Berbice Calling. So when I was invited to take part in broadcasting as an announcer and a producer, this is when it started after Berbice Calling, and it was different kettle of fish to just singing. But fortunately for me, we had some excellent program managers. They either made you or you got out. They challenged you. They ascertained what they thought you could do. And even though you didn't have that confidence in yourself, they somehow saw that you had it within you once you were challenged to do this. His name is Rafiq Khan, that I think of most of all. Rafiq, if he knew you didn't like a classical program, he made you do a classical program. And he didn't just throw you in to sink or swim. He didn't allow you to go in there and do a bad job. Do a good job, or you're going out. We're not just taking the program away from you. He's going to come and help you with the pronunciations. He's going to remind you the type of program that you're doing. You don't do a classical program like you do a calypso program, you know, that sort of thing. And I remember one of the lessons, 2 lessons that he taught me. I was working with the Radio Damar Needy Children's Fund, very tired. On 2 occasions he told me, you're sounding tired on the air. And I told him, I am tired, Mr. Khan. The 3rd time I was angry because I felt sorry for Olga. They had all gone home and rested the weekend, but I was tired. And I said, but I am tired, Mr. Khan. You know what he told me? He says, when you're that tired, stay home. And I wondered at this. He says, because there are people who are tired, who are lonely, who are alone. Yours is the only voice going into their homes, and you are tired. In other words, I've never pulled a mic switch from them, and I'm tired, or even answer my telephone. I think some people should be banned from answering a telephone. I really mean it. Because there is somebody at the other end. So broadcasting, for me, we learned by mistakes corrected. The same Rafiq Khan called me once and he handed me a piece of paper. And he said, how do you pronounce this? It was Leonards, Leonard. So he says, where you get this Leonardo from? I was trying to show off, you know, Leonardo da Vinci. So everybody knows that Leonard is Leonard. So you give the Leonards, especially in death announcements, a Leonardo, which was not accepted at all.
When we come back, Auntie Olga tells us of leaving Guyana for Barbados and that voice that we knew and loved on Barbados Rediffusion. Auntie Olga, let us now jump a bit ahead in our story. I want to hear about why and how you came to Barbados.
Well, how a plane, I didn't fly. Why? I came first of all in 1963. Our son was in England at the time, and Guyana at that time, there was a lot of racial conflict, which was part of the political program.
Yeah.
The Africans were against the Indians were against the Africans, and anybody like me, or, well, not me personally, because even when they were looting and choking and robbing, they would stop and wave and say, hello, Auntie Olga, you know, that sort of business. But our son was in England, and he was not enjoying the weather at all. He wanted to come back to the Caribbean, and there was no way he would have found a job in Guyana at the time. My husband, who I don't think that many people know that he was, well, he's dead now, the Barbadian. I think many people don't even know I was married. I was married to the same man for 50 years, and then he died the year after. He had enough. Not true. We had a good marriage. So he suggested that we come to live in Barbados. And it was an easy move for me in the sense that I used to visit Barbados from the late 30s. My first visit to Barbados was right after the riots. But I really didn't know the island then, because every time I came to Barbados as his wife and as the family's guest, they took me to their places of interest, to their friends and family. So it was quite limited, although I was very happy. But we wanted John to get away from the conflict of Guyana, and so we came to Barbados. I asked for a transfer to Barbados Rediffusion, which was associated with Radio Demerara, and they accepted me, and I came here in 1963.
Auntie Olga.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Lots of people think in terms of broadcasting, but it was long before then. My sister, who I said was about 18 years older than I, she started having children when I was 6, and I insisted on being called Auntie Olga, and she had 6 children. So they all called me Auntie Olga. And it was a joke for people to call this 6-year-old child Auntie Olga, which she insisted upon, by the way. And that's where the Auntie Olga really started. And in Guyana, I don't know, once you're grown up and the child is not, for whatever reason, bound to call you Mr. or Mrs., you automatically will call Auntie, whatever it is. And so I was also involved in children's programs for the longest while in Guyana, and being there was Auntie Olga.
So you came here as Auntie Olga?
Everybody calls me Auntie Olga. Sometimes people much older than I am, and you could see they don't know what to call me. They get my name like Olga Lopes, which is so funny. I hear Olga, just confusion of the Lopes. So Auntie Olga Manor.
It's the easiest.
Yeah, easy.
Barbados Rediffusion, when you went, what was that like?
I had a very good welcome here. As a matter of fact, I was very lucky when I came to Barbados, in that in Guyana there was no male program and female program. We had to do everything in Guyana, and you had to do it to the satisfaction of your program manager. When I came, they had a woman doing the women's program, another one doing the birthday program, another one doing the children's program, and no woman reading the news at all. All these things we did in Guyana. So there was a nest egg here waiting for me. And I was able to do it's not bragging, it was just what we did. It's what we did. Children, I was accustomed to children. Actually, I don't know that I solicited a children's program, but Mr. Khan, as I told you, I think I don't know why. It's either that he read something in you that you did not see in yourself and decided you can do it. So, Olga, we want a children's program. So you had a children's program, whether Olga wanted it or not. Olga, I think we need to have something added to our format. Have you any idea what we can do? Of course, I had no idea, because I think I was doing already too much. He says, well, what about, one of these little philosophical programs, because you're always having some little uplifting thing to add to your family hour, and taking it out of that and mix it with some appropriate music. And that was the beginning of yours truly, Olga, which was heard 7 times a week, Monday to Saturday and twice on Wednesdays.
It was in the afternoon?
It was in the morning.
It was in the morning?
It was in the morning, and then Wednesday it was called a special edition. Right. And that went on for years. The children's program too, that was thrust on me. He took a delight. And if you had to do an outside broadcast, you knew in advance where you were going to be assigned, and you'd better learn everything possible about the place, because like Princess Margaret or anybody like that, there she comes, there she goes, what are you going to do? You've got to have something in case whoever is handing over to you dries up and hands to you, and you just cannot have a blank space. You can't use a script at that time. You've got to see and to say, and to say, and you've got to keep on yapping away. until the takeover takes over.
Yeah.
And so on. Those were things that was the training that we had.
Children's party,
Mm-hmm.
out of which came Wendy Ali
Oh
and
yes,
so many
Cheryl
other people.
Hackett,
Yes.
Edwin,
Saturday morning.
Every Saturday
Yep.
morning.
And if you recited well, you got 25 cents and a bag of CCC
Bag of
sweets.
sweets, yes.
I got the sweets, but I didn't
You
get the
got the
25
sweets.
cents.
Well, I can't remember who it was that told me, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Jeanette Lynn Clark that said she came for the sweets.
Yep.
You know?
A bag of CCC sweets. Forget the 25 cents.
Yeah. And you know, I think it was because as a child, you did so few things right. And I look for something in all children to compliment. You know, even if they try, they can't fail in everything. I remember, for instance, my daughter, going back to my days as a child. My daughter's name is Martha Elizabeth, and the Elizabeth comes from an old nun. I can't remember what it was she saw in this child that nobody saw anything to praise. But she praised me with something, and I walked behind this nun all the time, hoping to hear how wonderful I was, you know. So I always look for something good in children to praise. And it didn't matter if they didn't sing too well. It was a good trial, everything. I remember young Ramesses Brown coming to me when he must have been 2 or 3 years old here. And he ran out of his mother's arms, and she tried to scramble him, but he was a quicker runner than she was, and he arrived at me, and I pushed her off, and I said, yes, what do you want to, I want to sing, he says. So what do you want to sing? So he took the microphone and said, and the Lord said, and I'm waiting for more. I said, that's it? He said, yes. I said, don't you know more of it? Yes. And he just said, and the Lord said. That was all Ramesses knew, and the Lord said. But I clapped him, he had a big applause and things like that. Ramesses now performs. Yes. Cheryl Hackett, Wendy Allen, Margaret Bovell, the Merry Boys, which turned out to be Spice and that lot, Edwin among them. I remember Richard Stout paying tribute to me one night, and I can't remember all the children that passed through my hands. Mm-hmm. And I, at the end of it all, you know who came up to me and said, Auntie Olga, you didn't remember me? I said, well, I can't remember all the children. He said, John King. John King appeared in my program as a child. You know, but I really can't remember all or whoever passed through my hands.
This may be a difficult question, but do you have 1 or 2 extremely special memories, special moments of your life at Barbados Rediffusion?
I don't know. I really don't know. You know, there were the Queen shows, you know, with little Marva Manning winning the show of the night. I mean, everything I take on is a bit of a challenge. I might appear very calm and competent in a broadcast, but sometimes I'm quaking inside like a jelly. It's a very grave responsibility, and you have such a sense of relief and joy and even pride when you've done it, and you feel you haven't embarrassed yourself. There are many places I've been, many interesting people I've talked to, you know, old and young. I can't think of any one person that stands out.
And of course, you are still on what is now the Starcom Network. You still do a program there.
Yes, I do a program now called Beautiful Music on Sunday afternoons at 6 o'clock, 6:30. And I'm on the gospel station with yours truly, Olga, at 6 o'clock. They've asked me to come and do another yours truly, Olga, that I did there every Sunday before I retired.
For broadcasters like myself, your voice and what you did with it and how you did what you did was the benchmark against which we patterned ourselves. We want to be, I mean, everybody wanted to be like Auntie Olga. If you're in television, you want to be like Marva Manning, but if you were in radio, you wanted to be like Auntie Olga. Is there anything deliberate about the way you speak and what you say, that kind of thing?
I think most of us, new announcers, tend to forget that the microphone will take care of the volume. So they approach this microphone as if they are in the middle of a circus ring. This is to start with. They have to shout and they have to overdo things. If you could just think of, instead of thinking of thousands of people listening, you think of somebody out there. Be yourself. Don't have all these various accents that you're hearing now. Don't get familiar calling people sweetheart and darling. Sometimes you can find, like a little child, you will hug, hello darling, but don't use it as a bait to compliment people. You don't need that at all. You just be yourself, talking to somebody out there. There's one, and don't tell people I don't like Luther Vandross, because I heard an announcer say this. But you ask for it, I'm going to play your Luther Vandross. Who cares what you like? You know, as an announcer, you know, you don't cater to yourself.
To your taste, yeah.
You cater to the people, but not everything they like you're going to like either. For instance, there are certain calypsos that I would never, ever, I don't care how popular they are, on my program. I won't play music that divide people. I won't play music that is vulgar. You know, things went so bad in my early days of broadcasting that a song like "I've Got You Under My Skin" was banned. You know, that was donkeys years ago. I could see where that was an exaggeration. Yes. "I've got you under my skin."
But I remember when I was working at Barbados Radio Fusion, and I don't know if you remember, whenever we were looking, you were on Radio Fusion as it was then, and I was on VOB. Whenever we were looking for the hottest calypsos, the most popular ballads, somebody would always say, check in Auntie's studio, because whenever Auntie's on the air, she always plays these songs. And you would tend to think, well, this is more going into the senior programming one. But you always had the hottest music of the moment on your shift.
Yeah, I'm willing to take on any kind of music. The beat does not bother me. It's the lyrics that sometimes bother me. You know, and I feel that I must not spread anything that is not good. You know, it doesn't have to be bad, right. But it's got to be good. It's got to be good.
Your charity work. How did you, in Barbados, get into continuing your charity work in Barbados?
First of all, when I came to Barbados, it was not my intention to say, here I am, I've come to look after all the poor people. But I would go along with anybody who thought I could help. And I was invited to take part in a highly regarded and recognized group. And we had a lot of meetings. Many of them could not start because there weren't enough people there. And when you had these meetings, half of the people brought excuses why their assignments were not done. And I figured I needed that like I needed a hole in my head, because the actual event made a net profit of $12. That to me was a total waste of time. And by this time, my reputation from Guyana had followed me here, and Frank Pardo asked if I would do a show for the broadcasting station similar to the one that I did in Guyana. I didn't do it for the broadcasting station. I used the broadcasting station bravely, actually. I don't even know that it took bravery. I just slept. I have a way of leaping and then looking. Because it all started with 5 boys needing some second-hand clothes to go to a lunch, a Christmas lunch in Guyana. And I got in there and I asked people if they had clothes, because I was given the age of the children. You can average a size. If you can send me these things so that these boys can go to this luncheon. And I got more clothes for the 5 boys. So I had to go back in the air and tell people I have more clothes, you know, of any poor children. Yeah. And that went on and on and on until we had 166 children, and we had a so-called party. You know, so that's where it started. The following year, it was not my intention to do what was done, but gifts started coming, money, toys, and so on. I took it to my program manager and asked him what to do with this. And he says, well, evidently they like what you're doing, so let's have the Radio Demerara Needy Children's Fund. And that's where it started there, and went right up to 1963, when I came to Barbados, and I was asked if I could, would do such a program. And Barbadians picked up that challenge immediately. And from the moment I voiced my willingness, if you would join me, they joined me. And even after my official retirement from broadcasting, the program, I think I'm even more busy in that field of endeavor since I'm not officially in broadcasting than when I was in broadcasting.
Are we in Barbados a giving people?
Oh yes.
Is the response
Oh
very
yes.
generous?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I am not short of support. I don't know if it is because I am a hands-on person. Mm-hmm. If you write to me, you can tell me your saddest story. I am coming to see that what you're telling me is the truth. And I'm not really coming to see if what you're telling me is the truth. I'm coming to see how I can appropriately outfit your need, like your children, because all 8-year-old children are not the same size. So it's going to be specific and being individualistic, that I locate frauds. You know, I find that you're not who you figure that numbers will impress me. You know, it doesn't impress me.
And in these changing times where everyone and communities in general are not as open and welcoming and quite frankly as safe as they used to be, yet you carry on.
Oh, I can go in some of the most challenging places, you know, boys on the block sort of business, and in between their conversation, whatever they're doing, "Hi, Auntie Olga," you know, they shout at me. Most of them know me maybe from school. Mm-hmm. So I can go anywhere. My husband used to tell me, because if he expected me home at 6 o'clock and I didn't come at till 6:30 or so, he says, "I want to know where you are. If something happened to you," he says, "if anything happens to me, somebody's going to look down and says, Auntie Olga, somebody will tell you."
Mm-hmm. So then you then have a pretty clear picture, because you're out there every day, mm-hmm. as to the state of poverty in Barbados. I'd like you to comment on that.
There are a lot of poor people in this country. A lot of poor people in this country. We try to help as many as possible. And I must say I get support from the government itself. Mm-hmm. Quite a few of the houses I have asked for, I have obtained, but of course it's not an easy program. The demand where government is concerned is grave and plentiful, but on quite a few occasions I've met with a certain amount of success. Mm-hmm. I'm supported with the widow's mite. I've had people coming to me apologizing for being so late, but they were waiting on their little thing, you know, their pension. They would find from their little to give. Corporate Barbados also helped me. Mm-hmm. You know, I get support all the time in all sorts of ways. Mm.
When Up Close continues, Auntie Olga tells us about her awards and honors in Guyana and Barbados and how she wants to be remembered. Auntie Olga, your work and your contribution mm-hmm. has earned you the respect and love of us all, but also numerous awards and citations and honors. How does that make you feel?
Humbled, but happy. And I usually tell people on these presentations that I am the recipient, but I'm representing so many people who helped me to be whatever I achieve. Starting back in 1961, there was the member of the British Empire from Her Majesty the Queen. Here in Barbados, from the Barbados government, there are 2 awards, the Barbados Service Star and the Gold Crown of Merit so far. All the various organizations, like National Organization of Women, JCs, Rotarians, name them, the Indian community, the Richard Stout Show, Barbadians that are living overseas. I don't want to list people because I might not remember everything. One of the tributes that I felt particularly touched with is the Roots experience, when a few years ago they named me as the Mother of the Year. You know, it was really a very touching experience. There's so many of them. I really can't recall, you know, but they're all over the place.
How do you recharge and find the strength to give and give, and when you thought that there was nothing else, you pull out something else and give again?
I don't know. I think once you see a need and you can do something about it, it doesn't necessarily have to be material. It could be a word, it could be a look. And if it's something material, you can do. You don't have to do big things. Lots of people call me and want to do what I'm doing. As if you want to help, just look around. There's somebody that you can help. Some child, some old lady, there is always someone that you can help.
Without you having to join an organization.
Exactly. You don't have to join an organization. You don't have to belong. Matter of fact, I have no committee as such, you know. I'm the most disorganized, organized person. Because I don't work with many people, and I'm ready to go, because people offer to help me if you can pick me up at 9 o'clock, and you think you can get me back up at 2 o'clock. I don't hold it against them because they have responsibilities of husband and children and home and work and so on.
But you're not like that.
I'm a free agent.
Yeah.
I go and I stay as long as possible, and I come back when it suits me. So I really don't hold it against them at all.
How do you relax? Well, actually, I should probably begin by asking, do you have any time
Oh,
where
yes.
you actually relax?
Oh yes. What do? I like to read. I like to look at television. I'm fortunate in that I have several channels to choose now, apart
So you
from
just
Channel
flick,
8.
yeah.
So I flick all over the place. And I find that is relaxing enough. My life is a constant reward. I go out, I think, not with a deliberate, friendly feeling, but I'm not going out there to find a battle. I'm going out there with a smile, and it's a genuine smile. I don't go out there mad. I try to smile my way through traffic, even if I am provoked, you know. So, I don't know.
That's an amazing gift or secret, because you are it. I've never seen you
I'm easy.
anything but, when I say smiling, not grinning and really, really happy, but
Yeah.
always very calm and placid and
easy,
willing to
I'm
stop and
easy.
say something.
And sometimes I think people act because something is bothering them. I'll tell you what happened to me the other day. I was at Bajpai, and this was during the mango season, and I'd sent somebody in to do some shopping for me. And a man that was selling something there asked me if I wanted it. I said, no, thank you. And he was so aggressive. What are you thanking me for? I said, well, you don't seem to understand a polite refusal. I said, no, thank you. So I'm going to tell you in local language, I want none. And he laughed. I was surprised at the reaction, because I thanked him graciously. No, thank you. What are you thanking me for?
So then you had to really tell
I
him.
retaliated. But he took it in good.
You spoke earlier of the visiting and the warmth of growing up in Ghana. As we are as a Barbadian society, in your opinion, losing our warmth, our
Not for me,
close
they are.
family
Not for
relationships?
me, they are.
Because you hear that quite
Not
often.
for me. I'm enveloped with love wherever I go. Old, young. I've never met anything but affection. And I think you can get it if you give it.
Yes.
Don't wait for people to reach out to you. You can, without it being too obvious, reach out to people. It doesn't hurt. Sometimes when I go to a checkout counter and I say, good morning or thank you, the reaction I get is as if I say, stick 'em up.
Yeah.
You know, they're so surprised at somebody greeting them with a good morning or a thank you that they're taken back. And I wish more people at these checkout counters will at least show some sign of appreciation or recognition of your presence. I know the job is not all that happy, but you are there, and you would feel a lot better if I think you can't hurt yourself. Be totally selfish. So be your better self than relying on people to bring out the goodness that is there. You know?
What is a typical day for you, like now that you have
Very busy,
retired?
very busy. Most of the time I go to sleep or try to go to sleep with things undone, although I've been doing things all day long. I've got a lot of things to catch up with. There are
Amazing.
plenty of things for tomorrow, but my tomorrows are usually filled all the time.
And you're still doing your tours as well? Your
Yes,
island
yeah,
tours?
I love my tours because I love Barbados. And I pamper set when I get them there, especially the rich people who come, you know, are ready to look at these little houses and things like that. I'm quick to remind them, like where you come from, the richest countries in the world, we have our poor people. And if you want to be poor, pick Barbados to be poor in, because you can wear the same clothes from one end of the year to the next, year after year after year, and you're not going to go hungry.
There's always a breadfruit tree nearby.
Exactly so. So I shut them up as if they haven't got poor people. And I can tell you, poor people punish a lot more than our poor people in countries like England and Canada and the States. You know. So I told him, if you're going to be poor, pick Barbados to be poor in.
Have you been back to Guyana recently?
The last time I went back was the 40th anniversary of the Radio Demerara Needy Children's Fund, and they asked me to come, and it hurt me so much, Carol, to see my magnificent country of 83,000 square miles, a very loving country where people from political ambitions were separated. They are no longer as friendly as they were. And so a lot of material things, a lot of things that are there with all the natural resources, gold, diamond, bauxite, massive rivers. You can stick the whole Barbados in the mouth of the Essex River. I'm not making fun. And this little place with no real resources.
Just its people.
And the intelligence of the people and the use of it. You know, that's why I get so concerned sometimes when they start with this black and white business, because I knew Barbados in its old days of prejudices. There's no getting away from it at all. You never saw people of color in banks or shops or anything. Now you can't find any person that's fair in the banks, in the shops, in posts of administration, in government, in the professions. I don't know, we can't lie down and die. We're going to die eventually. But I think this is bad, that people use race or religion. The worst thing you can do when you're asking me for help, I come from Guyana, you know. I'm a Portuguese, by the way, I'm Portuguese. I'm a Roman Catholic. It doesn't matter to me what religion you belong to, or if you belong to any religion. I don't care whether you're black or white or Indian or whatever. And these are things that are important to each person. In Guyana, when I sang, I was a sort of singing star and used to get fan mail. Somebody wrote and asked me to come and have dinner with them one night. And when I arrived, I knocked on the door, and she opened the door and says, "Before you come in, I have something to tell you. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Do you mind?" I said, "Well, you have something to tell me. I have something to tell you. I'm a Roman Catholic. Do you mind?" So I don't mind what you are. You know, I really don't. Those things are not important. Religion is meant to unite. Sight was given to see, preferably things that were good. You don't fault a person because of their complexion. I cannot stand any sort of prejudice at all. You know.
And my final question, Auntie Olga, have you at 82, have you lived the life you wanted to live?
I think so. I believe so. As a matter of fact, so many things have come to me that God must have been watching over me, because let's face it, I could not apply for a job as a broadcaster today. I never passed an examination in my whole school life. I used to be moved from one class to the next because you were there in that class for 2 years. I left, as I said. I didn't know anything about broadcasting, but I came in. I don't think many people knew anything about broadcasting. I had people directing me, and I think it was either cowardice, not that I was that ambitious, to listen and learn from it. Like this boy Tate's mother, I remember when I thought I was a singing star and started to throw words around like damn it and blast it and things like that, you know, just showing off. And his mother, Dorothy Tate, came behind me very quietly and she says, "Oh, you're so much nicer without those words." And there were little things like this that created me.
Yeah.
God has been good to me in that He sent so many people that directed my footsteps and offered me opportunity. I think that I am so far in broadcasting is that all the big stars in broadcasting that I used to admire, but they thought they had arrived. So they did all sorts of things, including leaving the work. I'm not having any of this. And when they left, I was a spare tire. You were the star, you're gone. So they got to look for somebody to put in your place. They put me.
Olga.
And I became what you were, and maybe without really deliberately setting out to be me, I became me. And I was accepted.
And finally, how does Auntie Olga want to be remembered?
Well, I think, most of all, I'd like to be remembered as somebody that tried to help wherever and whenever possible. And I think to a certain extent, I feel need will go on forever, even after I'm gone. But that is really what I would like people to remember, that I tried. I hope I succeeded to some extent, and I'll go on trying. And I would like to thank all those people who helped me to help the people who asked me for help.
I'm going to thank you so very much. I remember when we first decided we were going to do this program, you were our first choice as a guest, but at that point in time you were incapacitated, so we really...
That's right, I remember
really
you asking me,
yes.
And I was in hospital at the time.
Yes, so thank you
and
very,
I was
very
hoping
much.
that you'd ask me again.
Yes, and we did. Thank you so very much, and we wish
My
you
pleasure.
all the very best with
Thank
your
you very
future
much.
work.
Thank you, dearie.
That's our program for this week, and thank you so much for joining us. And do join us again next week when another outstanding Barbadian gets up close with me, Carol Roberts. Good evening.